Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, we broadcasters have to stay impeccably neutral when it comes to the EU referendum. The newspapers, on the other hand, well, they can tell us exactly what they think and, of course, try to influence us too, and they often try to do just that. But will they have any effect on how people decide how to vote? We sent our Ellie to find out.
I spend a lot of time reading the papers in my job, and over the last few months and for the next few months they've been full of Europe, and a little bit more Europe. But will what they say and the slant that these newspapers have any effect on how people vote? Should we find out? Madam, quick question. Newspapers, will they influence how you vote in the EU referendum?
I'm not going to vote in the EU.
Are you not?
No.
Why not?
Because they haven't told you enough. It's a wiggly-piggly. You don't know what's doing that. So at the moment, no.
Probably will, yeah, probably will.
Why's that?
Because I don't know very much about it.
Will the newspapers influence how you vote in the EU referendum?
No.
Why?
I've already made my own mind up. I don't need the newspapers to make my mind up for me.
Fair enough. What about you, sir?
I've already made mine up, thank you.
So you don't need these?
No, definitely not.
All right, I won't ask. Thank you very much. Cheers.
No problem.
Well, sometimes the papers lie, so you should get it from them, from their perspective.
But
So-
you wouldn't listen to one paper in particular?
It depends on the paper.
What paper?
I don't know.
No, it won't.
Why?
Because I always do my own politics. It's what I believe in my heart and from my mum, and what I believe in the community is best for me.
So if one of these papers came out and told you to vote one way or the other,
No, wouldn't listen to it.
will the newspapers influence how you vote in the upcoming EU referendum?
No.
No, why not?
No. Well, everybody tells you what they want you to believe, and I think you don't get it from one source. You have to get information from different sources before you make up your mind. That's all.
Excellent, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's all
the
right.
best reasoned argument we've heard.
That was our Ellie. We're joined now by the former Liberal Democrat MP, campaigner for press regulation, Evan Harris. In 1975, over 90% of the newspapers were in favour of Britain staying in. This time, more will probably be in favour of coming out. We don't know yet, but that's the way, certainly the coverage would suggest that. That's a free society.
Yes, there's very clear history, and it's reasonable that the press should be allowed to be partisan in the way that, as you say, broadcasters aren't. They've set for themselves some rules within that, that they are supposed to separate news and comment, which, if that was really applied by the self-regulator, then several of the papers wouldn't be able to print anything every day. They're separately, every headline has to be justified by the text below it, not what's left in the office or some sources that aren't included, by the headline. And also they've got to take care not to print inaccurate, distorted or misleading information.
Can I just
so
come back on
they can take a view in their editorial. They can even be biased in their news coverage, but what they're not supposed to do is distort or mislead.
But
lie.
they don't. Do they really need to separate news from opinion in newspapers? I mean, if you look at front pages on the left and the right, it is clear that the news is motivated by both their choice of the news and how they present that news, whether it's the Guardian or the Daily Mail, is informed by their worldview.
As I say, if they followed their own code, and this is their own code, their own editor's code, written by a committee mainly of editors, chaired by Paul Dacre, it says they must take care to separate news and opinion. They don't do it, I agree. Right. Maybe they should just abandon the pretense that they do it, given that they don't.
Have you signed up to that, separate news from opinion in a tabloid?
Well, I don't think you can completely do that, because the editorial line of a newspaper colours and flavours the approach to news. It's one of the facts of life. It's for how you behave in every other way of life. I think it's fantasy land to suggest that because a paper has a view, as we do, particularly on Europe, but on many other subjects, that we don't express that in the coverage of the things we agree on.
Yes, but I think what it means is that you shouldn't state as fact, as a factual news story, what is an opinion of the editor. And maybe Trevor's right that it can't be done, in which case their sham regulator should dispense with that sham rule. And Trevor's very well placed because he is on this independent regulator. I mean, he's the most opinionated. I admire him for his opinions. The fact he's so opinionated. But just like there's no way I should be on a press regulator, there's no way on a regulator that says it's independent. The biggest advocate of carrying on as before pre-Leveson.
What are you doing on a press regulator?
It's
a good question.
You're a journalist. What are you doing as a press regulator?
They needed a journalist who knew about tabloid newspapers and popular newspapers, and therefore I was elected.
Are you? Do you think
you're appointed? You're appointed by Hayden Phillips, who you appointed from the foundation group. So you appointed the guy that appointed you. That's a really cushy number. If politicians did that, your newspaper would be the first to call it out. So I think you should resign yourself, expose yourself. Yes.
Okay.
Expose them? No, just resign will be enough.
At that point, is that legitimate?
I think that is perfectly legitimate. My role in the appointment of the chairman of the selectors was a very peripheral one. We simply met. This is surely not what you came for.
No, I want to come back to Europe. Will the British papers are pretty Eurosceptic, aren't they? And that informs how they're covering this referendum.
I think by and large they are. I think that it's very difficult not to be. And I think that there are, in our case, we're trying to give it as much balanced publicity and coverage with views from all sides as we possibly can. But the evidence...
Most of the headlines are pretty negative about Europe.
Because I think the subject is pretty negative.
But that's not balance. Well, I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate view, but it's not a balance.
Isn't the real reason what you said on Newsnight, which is that Rupert Murdoch chooses the line? I don't object to that. Proprietors, they own a newspaper. They can say what the line is, and it usually suits their own commercial interests. What I object to is newspapers claiming we speak for our readers when really it's the proprietor saying it.
I don't fully understand the line of your argument. There's no reason why Rupert Murdoch shouldn't decide the line of something on a major issue like whether or not we should... Okay.
I agree. But admit it, he does, not your readers.
I think he did admit it, didn't you?
Yes.
You said, when Andrew said, there's a lot of negative stuff in your newspaper, you say, well, it's a negative issue. There's a lot of negative stuff in your newspaper about the EU because one man, not elected, not accountable, not even a British citizen, who owns the paper, says what you should write in this free press.
You're making assertions, but it doesn't mean that what you're saying is correct. We are entitled to have a view about a major subject, which is whether or not we should be in or out.
But he's saying it's Rupert Murdoch's view.
Well, Trevor said
we've been round a circle here several times, I think, Andrew. The ultimate decision, as Rupert Murdoch himself has said in public in the past, he will make the decision after a word with the editor of the paper.
Rosa, quick word from you?
Well, I do think that Evan's also not giving enough credence to the other way around, which is that readers also often drive their editorial decisions. So some readers, I think, are pretty anti-EU, and I'm sure that would have been a factor, I think Trevor would agree. Working on newspapers when I did, that was very much a consideration. What do our readers think? And we knew what our readers were like and what they wanted.
I've always thought it was best to ignore readers. Very, very quickly. Do you think the weight of Euroscepticism in the papers will influence the outcome?
I think if they say things that aren't true, and the Queen headline was simply not supported by the text, even if that was what she said was correct, it didn't say she backed Brexit. Okay. That's another breach of the code, and I don't think anything's going to be done about it.
We have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
I've been getting away with it all my